Beavemanites and Docutrons, assemble!
Okay, so back in the day, I was way above the wave, man. I traded in the girls for the video games. I played so much Super Smash Bros. Other kids called me names.
And on that note, this is Beaveman on the dock, and I am the Beaveman. With me today is the Rons. Hey!
Oh, Jesus. You actually went back to that. I had not given it any thought. Oh,
No.
Yeah. I haven't really thought of a cool name for myself, right? And I'm pretty sure out there are a lot of people like going, we've got a few choice names for you. But we'll digress past that until it's in stone.
Speaking of which, before we get too far into it,
Of course.
I would like to say to the following cities, thanks for listening. Los Angeles,
All right.
which is, I don't know if you guys know this, that's in California. Glendora, California. San Jose, California.
Awesome.
And Mountain View,
Mountain View hits home
California.
again.
Mountain View, you have listened more than any city in America, according to the statistics that I have
Awesome.
on SoundCloud. So thanks a lot for listening. There's not a
No
before
one
we
from
start this
overseas
podcast.
yet.
There's not this week. This is just my last stats from the week. If I go back, I can change the stats here if you want me to.
Well, if you change the stats, why aren't we up there?
No, I don't mean change the stats in my benefit. I mean the ones that are recorded that I can actually read. We did have a listener in the United Kingdom in the past 30 days, and one in Portugal. I don't know if I actually said that right, but it's the way we say it here in the United States. In Michigan is Portugal.
Okay.
Portugal.
All right. That's awesome. That's we're branching out.
Also, because it's a new thing now, and I think that the Rons might be a little bit obsessed with it. Your stats, Ron, for the last podcast that we did, Gray Man Theory Part 1.
Part 1.
You
All right.
had 16 plays this week.
Well, it's not as up there as I'd like, but it's getting up there.
Yeah, now the podcast before that was, what was this podcast about? I'm not even sure. I cleverly titled that one. You had 51 plays.
I'm getting up there, Micah.
And you have to remember that, of course, that this is just the SoundCloud stats. I don't have stats for other podcast applications. And we are heard on many podcast platforms like Spotify, the Apple Podcast app.
And straight off the web as well.
Podchaser, on the web, etc., etc., etc.
So does it record the stats if it's just played off the web then? Because that's how I play it.
No. I only have stats for SoundCloud.
Okay.
So if people listen on SoundCloud, that's the stats that I get. Capiche?
I understand. I didn't know you
understand.
spoke Japanese. That's
Is
cool.
that Japanese? I don't think that's Japanese.
Oh, well. I'm not that smart on
I was supposed to come up
languages.
with a clever nickname for you today, but I did not.
That's quite okay. Like I said, there are a lot of people who have similar names for me.
If you listen to this podcast, first of all, like you people out there in Los Angeles and Mountain View who seem to listen fairly often, thanks for listening. Obviously, we don't offend you. Now, if you listen to this podcast and you get offended, don't listen to the podcast.
No.
Or keep listening to it and continue to be offended.
So let me say that. If you're offended, email us and tell us what offended you. So, prior to what we were discussing outside the studio, triggers. So I'm not for being insensitive or sensitive for that matter. Email us. And if you'd like a certain subject for us to talk about, email us again. Not that we'll read it. It just tells us you'll listen to us.
Does anybody use email?
I do.
Oh, all right. I still use email also, but I'm starting to think that nobody else does. And I know that some podcasts are like, oh, well, I really don't want anybody to email me anyway. I don't know how I feel about that. I guess if you email me and you say my podcast sucks, you're probably going to get an email back that says, thanks for listening.
But once again, it goes back to, hey, you did listen to my podcast to tell me what you thought of it.
Right.
So I would like that.
But if you're offended by my podcast, fuck you, because of this reason. This podcast, and we're probably going to do a podcast about this particular subject because Ron brought it up.
Thank you.
If my podcast offends you, I don't fucking care. It's a warning in the first place. I don't have to say it before every freaking podcast. if you listen to the early podcast, basically it says, I don't give a fuck if I offend you in the first place. This podcast is for me. And if people listen to it and are entertained by what they hear, then fantastic. I've entertained somebody. But let's be honest, I do this podcast for purely selfish reasons. For me to bitch about the things that I'm interested in bitching about, for me to express my idiotic opinions on things, and never once do I say that I'm an expert on anything. The description of the podcast is a couple of idiots, a couple of veteran idiots giving their idiotic opinions on things.
Why, let's not be inclusive on the vets. It's a bunch of idiots giving their opinion, really. It's a bunch of idiots saying shit, really. I mean,
are you an expert of anything?
No.
Do you think you're an expert on anything? Neither am I.
Right. The only expert I would say or qualify is I can breathe. And that's about it.
I'm not even good at that. I have to wear a CPAP machine.
No.
My brain doesn't even tell me to breathe while I'm sleeping.
But the thing is, I'm not an expert on things. I'd like to say I know a lot of things about different subjects, but shit. I'm not.
I do not know smart. Shit. Let me clarify the fact that I do not know shit. Professionally, I would say that I do a pretty decent job. But am I an expert? No. Especially in the field that I work in that's ever changing. I have to read shit every day, and honestly,
but you're in a field
I feel
like you
dumb
mentioned, just
every
changes.
day. I feel dumb every day.
Yeah, you're in a field that changes.
It's a learning environment, and I've been doing it for over a decade now. Total combined time nursing is 20 years.
What qualifies you as an expert? I mean, you can be the top in your field, of course, but what qualifies you as an expert?
Well, for me, nothing, because I'm not one. For me,
there you go.
Not a damn thing, because I'm not one.
I take that back. I'm probably being an expert in being an idiot.
I'm pretty good at that also. I'm pretty good. Are you one of those, if people start, do you ever have people come to you and just start talking about a subject that they naturally assume that you would be interested in?
Yeah, I do, actually.
And what do you do when that happens? If you don't know anything about the subject, what do you do?
I listen intently to see how I can connect it.
Do you give them this intent look?
Well, yeah, I do.
I
actually listen intently to see if I can connect it to something that's relatable, right? Sort of like when you mentioned your medical background. Now, I'm not an expert at that, but can I connect it? Yeah, but can I connect it to something? And I can, right? Some of the times I can, I'll say that. And some of the times I can't. But when I make that connection, I'm like, oh, okay. Is it sort of like this? And you're like, well, yeah, kind of. So there's that connection. And if I can, I'm like, can you put it in a context where you can relate it, where I could be related to it, right, in some sort of way? So I make that connection, right? And if I can't, I'll completely tell you I don't understand. It's sort of like when, in case you didn't know,
no, don't do it.
Don't do it. I'll do it at the end of the podcast.
At the end of the podcast.
But there are certain things that I will make a connection when I'm doing something. And if I'm not an expert, as I was going to say, I'll ask. And if I still don't understand it, I'm smart enough to take a step back and do some research possibly. And I say possibly because I always don't get the chance to try to understand it.
But you have to be interested in it, though, don't you think?
No, not really.
No, you don't. No. You're just going to read about something and then say whether you're interested or not.
Yeah, well, in our dealing with people today, sometimes we become a soundboard, right? Someone's depressed, someone's happy, whatever. Someone's, they want to share the information, and you can relate, like I said, to a certain way. But if you can't relate, how do you find out about it, right? So you make that connection with them. It's one of those things that you're taught in the military. You're taught to disconnect as a soldier, but as you go through...
I believe in the Air Force, you guys totally disconnected as soldiers.
Okay.
And technically, you really disconnected because soldiers are only in one branch of the military.
Okay, fair enough. You being the expert on that.
Well, Army are soldiers. Mm-hmm. Navy are sailors.
Well, let me put it this way, Air more Force that you can relate to.
Air Force are paper plane flyers. Marines are Marines.
Yeah, we're paper. We play.
I don't know. What do you guys call yourselves? Air people?
Airmen.
Airmen. So what if you're a woman? You're still an airman?
Yeah, you're still an airman.
So you're all airmen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. But
I like Doc. He's a seaman.
Well,
technically, he's a sailor, but I guess he's a seaman.
Yeah.
He's seaman.
Yeah, he's seaman. At one point, I think we were all seaman.
The word of the day is seaman.
Seaman. But at some point, and I'll throw this out for all militaries, is that at some point you're taught to disconnect from everybody, right? While working as a team member, you disconnect because if you've got to have certain orders to go into a certain situation, you have to disconnect your emotions, get it done, and then come out.
But it's totally acceptable to pee yourself just a little bit if it's a bad situation.
Oh, yeah. And as you get older, it's okay because you're going to be doing it anyway and you have the proper training for it. So when you go through NCO school, right? Sergeant school.
Gotta get my button.
Okay, the cricket thing.
Yeah.
So when you go through NCO school, you're taught to empathize, right? And you realize when you start to learn how to empathize with somebody, you get better results. And that really applies to the real world. So how do you get to that empathy, right? Sympathy is differently than empathy. Thank you. A little louder. Right. A little louder. Okay. So you got, there we go. It's like camping. Damn crickets. So how do you relate to somebody? You try to make that connection. And if you don't understand, go and research the problem.
I feel like too many people talk to you if you have to think about that stuff too much.
Well, in my profession or what I do outside the studio, they do. I have to understand where you're coming from to help you. I don't necessarily have to agree with you. I just have to come and understand you. Right? I may not like your situation that you put yourself into, but I have to understand where you're coming from so I can help you. And if I can't, I'll do a little research to understand it more, on my part at least. Doesn't mean I necessarily will enjoy it.
Well, I'm pretty lucky because I think a lot of times people don't talk to me.
Well, you have a bedside manner, as they call it, don't you?
I do, but beyond I think I have a pretty good bedside manner, but beyond the patient interaction, as in like regular people, I don't have anything to say. So, for example, if someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, what'd you think of the Super Bowl?"
Okay.
I say, "I don't know. I didn't watch it." 'Cause I didn't. 'Cause I don't care.
Well, that's totally, and I can empathize with that because I'm not a big sports fan. I am not. I like different things on the subject we won't mention, but I like different things. So if you say I didn't watch it, I'm like, all right, cool. And then I can flip that on you and say, what are you interested in? And if you say being alone, all right,
get the
fuck away from me. I'm cool with that.
I don't want to talk.
Yeah, I don't want to talk to you. So I'm cool with that. That tells me right there you have a barrier set up that you don't want to be around people. And some people, that's cool. That really is. But I can empathize with that. That tells me that you're kind of put off, right? And maybe later when you feel more comfortable about it, or me, or your situation, you can talk about it.
2 years go by and you come up to talk to them again, you're like, too soon? It's too soon. It's too soon. We'd be remiss if we did not say hi to Paper Doc.
Hey, Paper Doc.
Hi-yo. Let's Paper Doc here. How's everyone doing today? I really don't care.
See?
You're kind of an arrogant asshole, Paper Doc.
And we can all empathize with that because we're all arrogant assholes at one point.
Exactly.
Trust me, I'm like that too.
We should also mention that soon we'll be rebranding. We're just waiting for...
Oh, wait a minute. We're going to mention rebranding, but we can't mention the subject that I want to talk that I can't mention. Okay.
We're talking about our future here, Ron.
Okay.
We will be rebranding soon. I'm still not going to tell you what the name is. It's pretty fucking cool, though.
It's always cool.
We got the artwork. We're just waiting on the theme music, which I was told will be done today.
Wow.
Now, that's exciting. However, if I don't like it...
Yeah, that's
if I don't fucking like it, it might not be that great.
And, it's cool that you're bringing outside sources, and I'm trying to draw another outside source in, too, because... and I'll say it's my son, he composes stuff. In fact, he composed an original piece for orchestra, and he brought in his bass to play it. And I said, yeah, it was really cool. And I said, oh, that sounds okay, but can you... And I was like you. I said, what if we tweak this in this way? And he's like, what? It's like, but Dad, it's played this way. I'm like, yeah, but do this guitar slide in on this note. Right now, I know nothing about music. I know what I like to listen to, but I know nothing about notes and beats or anything like that.
Well, music is subjective.
Of course. And he did the downslide, and my brain exploded. And I'm like, that's it. Do that. Right? And he's like, okay. And he did. I think he got an A for that. So I said, can you, and he's composed before, and I'm like, I want you to compose something for me, right? And can you compose me an intro and an outro? And it's like, yeah, I can. All right, get it done. I'd like to hear what you have. And if I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. But, that's my way of drawing him in and saying, okay, here, I want you to be part of my world if we're going to continue to podcast, right? And you're like, all right, and we're rebranding.
Part of your world.
There we go.
Yeah. Does he compose funny? Did you used to watch The Simpsons?
I did.
Do you remember that episode? Do you remember that episode in the early years where Homer is reminiscing about the barbershop quartet,
The B Sharps,
and how the group was ruined because that girl came in with Barney and then they were.
Isn't that the episode with George Harrison?
I don't remember. They were doing that weird stuff where she's like number 4 and he's like burping. I'm like, does RJ compose stuff like that? You're like number 5.
Six. If you're gonna do sound things, you got to have them queued up. What is that?
Number 4.
I don't get that.
Somebody sniffing.
Oh, yeah. We have to get you better sound effects.
I don't want better sound effects. They cost money.
They don't.
Speaking of things that cost money, I was also pleasantly surprised to see that the person who does the artwork for our podcast, Michaela, at It's Mix Studio, she did a really good job on this recent artwork, and I can see, and I'm glad that she finally actually charged me what it's worth, which was good. She should not give discounts.
Okay, I agree with that. I think that's a problem I have. I help out too many people, and they're like, and they're in a situation where they can't afford me, but I still help them out. I was like, I'll shoot you some money. I'm like, I know what you're living like. You can't afford to pay me, so we'll call it even.
You're like, we'll call it even. I'll work for free.
Yeah,
and you get my product.
Well, it's more my time than my product.
Well, let me shoot it to, let me tell you guys, once again, it's Michaela Porti at It's Mix Studio. That's the symbol at ITSMIKSTUDIO on Instagram. You can also find her on Facebook. So if you want some cool shit drawn, hit that young lady up because she draws some pretty cool shit.
And we'll put a link in our website.
Let me ask you this. Did you, when Ron builds the website, the Ron's builds the website.
That's gotta change. That's gotta fucking change.
Anyway, come up with anything.
What's your question?
What was my question? Oh, did you offer to pay RJ for this intro and outro? Not that you have to. I mean, he lives with you.
Yeah, he lives with us.
You're right. He lives. I let him live. This was his payment. I let him live.
No, not yet. However,
I mean, I wouldn't because he lives with you.
Yeah, but it's one of those things like. I remember listening to a lecture, and the lecture or the talk went like, "Do something that makes you happy, even if no one's paying you for it. Do it because eventually someone will pay you for it." Mm-hmm. And that's the goal. That's the life lesson here. If making music makes you happy, right? And I've said this to him before, though. Make sure you get credit for it. Make sure there's a copyright mark on it or something like that, right? And that way you can claim it as your own, right? And eventually someone will, pay you for it. And if they don't, that's okay. You have the right to take back that music, right? But there's that mark of ownership on it. Now, with that said, when I'm doing a podcast, I'm like, I don't have any money, right? Or I don't have the funds, I'll say, at this time. So if I get big, you get big. And that way I could shoot it back to you.
Yeah.
And then I can have you on the podcast. You're like, what do you do for a living? What are your hobbies? What would you like to confess to the world? And that would be great. Sort of like the movie topic or getting guests in and everything like that. Mm-hmm. Let's go with that. See what you can do with it. And then you get to preview what your skills are, right? Sort of like Michaela or Michaela? Michaela, her skills. Now, no one has seen her skills outside of a few of us, but it's good, right? And you're saying, you're awesome. I want the entire world to see you. You just shot her a link to it, and it's like, go check her out at Instagram. Awesome. Now someone's going to make the connection out at Mountain Home. Maybe I should check her out.
Mountain View.
Oh, Mountain View. Mountain Homes, Air
Please,
Force Base.
Mountain View.
Mountain View.
Don't stop listening to us because the Ron's is a moron. We already stated that we're idiots.
Oh, now, yeah, an idiot. So with...
Let me clarify it.
Yeah,
it's an idiot, not a moron.
Yeah. And with RJ, he's put his stuff out there, but that's after me pushing sometimes to the point where he'll quit. I'm like, put your stuff out on Newgrounds, which is a great website back in the day to get your music previewed. But once you put it on their site, it becomes almost their entity, right? Like, you're allowing us to use it in whatever way we see fit, in whatever game we see fit, right?
It's so easy to produce music now and
It
just put
is.
it out there. I mean, it didn't cost Skylar diddly to make his music,
But the thing is,
and he owns it.
yeah, he owns it, but he hasn't put it out there on a public forum.
Yeah, he is.
Really?
He's on SoundCloud. He's on Apple. He's
Yeah,
on all that
okay.
stuff.
Yeah, let me put it that way. He's on those sites where if he's read the EULA, it's his music still. But I think on Newgrounds, once you put it on there, it's open up to everybody. Because that's a gamer site that develops games or did develop games, and they wanted people to submit their music, and they said, okay, can we use this? And you'll get credit for it. We won't pay you, I think, but we'll... And once again, if I say I think, I'm not sure about the answer, but we'll
That's
get
good
you
because
that.
that's what that means. I think we don't
Yeah.
know. Sure, for sure.
But I would love to see more artists out there get credit for it, right? Because if my son gets big, that means I really don't have to work and he'll tour.
Well, unless he becomes pretentious and then he's like, I don't know him. That's my father.
Even better if you
What if he develops like a British accent?
That's even better because the more pretentious he gets, the more I get paparazzi on me, the more I'm in the news. And that means more publicity for the podcast.
The podcast?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's a good plan.
You can spin it any way. It's like...
Yeah, it's not like we're this super wholesome podcast.
No, we're
And
not. Trust
I've
me.
talked many times about punching people in the throat and stuff like that. So if the podcast was big and it did come down to that where I had to punch somebody in the throat, no one should be surprised that I punched somebody in the throat. I'm like, have you listened to the podcast?
And, that's the other thing. I mean, you're taking something and I'm always going to try and put a spin on it. Maybe it's the narcissistic in me, right? But it's like, it's about me. What? You're listening to this podcast, it's about me.
Well, it is.
Right? Yeah.
Is it not?
Well,
Is there a better forum? Well, you talked about this earlier. You were talking about posting on, what do you call those, blogs?
Yeah.
Is that,
Okay.
Whatever. I don't know. I don't do that shit. And somebody jumped down your throat about something that you posted.
oh, yeah. When my son was a small child,
He's still a small child.
yeah, he is. I was posting about my son's teething, and this is how we alleviated. We gave him pretzel rods, right? Because he liked them, right? And some pissed off parent,
What the fuck? Why does this happen every fucking time?
that's our call-in. So, let's find out who it is.
Ready? I'm going to take this call.
Okay,
Go
who is it?
ahead and
Okay,
I got it. Hold on.
who is it?
Go ahead, listener. You're on the air.
You're on the air, listener. Well, anyway,
You're on the air, listener, with Beaveman in the Dock. Go ahead. What do you got? Okay. I guess they fucking got nothing.
Wow.
There you go. All right.
we should wire that into your. We should wire that in. But someone got upset that my son was teething on pretzel rods.
Teething?
Yeah, he was teething.
It's a natural human process.
It is. That sound is the Beaveman wandering around his studio, right? It's a huge studio.
Not
He
wandering. I know where I am.
they don't, yeah, well, they don't know that.
I should know where I am.
Next time I'm just going to put my phone up and the ringtone, I'm going to just play, You Don't Love Me Anymore. Right? Just to see, it's like, what's that? That's from my wife. No. By the way, if she's listening, and she listens to the podcast, she loves the way we interact. I love you.
Oh,
Don't hurt me.
Really? Did you have to? You do have to do that. One of the things that annoys me. Speaking of things that annoy the Beaveman, I'm not on social media a lot. I'm not. I really don't post that much.
Yeah, I
And
know. I
really,
follow you.
I understand that one of the things that we need to do, obviously, but I'm going to make you do it.
Well, why not? Why not?
I'm going to make you do it. Yeah, Ron's is going to be in charge of pretty much, hopefully, the website and social media because I fucking hate that stuff.
All right, no problem.
And
Once
one of
again,
the things that I hate is when people will share their, I guess you would say it would be like a public display of affection on Facebook. They're like, I love you, schmoopsies. I love you too.
What's wrong with that?
It fucking annoys the fuck out of me.
I can't.
You don't have to share that with the rest of the world because, for one thing, that makes me think that you're fake in the first place and you don't interact that way.
You've met my
person.
wife. I am not fake.
If you act that way in person, then I really want to throat punch you because I'm like, okay, I understand, but do we need to be part of your disgustingness?
Well, you don't have to watch. It's like you're a big fan of porn. Why do you watch porn?
Yeah, well, they don't act like they love each other.
I don't know.
I mean,
there's those farmer porns where they love the sheep.
I think that if you're watching that, the government is watching you, by the way. So definitely,
Yeah,
here
stay
on
away from
Beaveman in the
that.
Dock, we do not endorse any type of bestiality or any type of porn in which there are unwitting participants or underage anything whatsoever. If you're watching that
What's an
stuff,
unwitting
why don't you
participant?
you need to fucking go to jail? If an unwitting participant, sexual assault, we don't support that. That's
No.
wrong.
My God, you went fucking dark.
I'm just mad. I am saying that none of that shit is right. That's
So-
all I'm saying. You know what? I can still be socially aware and socially conscious on Beaveman in the Dock. Soon to be rebranded by a different name.
So, when we're at that place I won't name, I can't say and hold
Hobby
my
Lobby.
the Hobby Lobby. I can't hold my wife's hand.
That's not what I'm saying. No. I'm talking
That's
about
a
that
PDA.
I'm
That's
talking
a-
about the gushing part. I'm talking about the social. I don't mind if you do that. I'm talking about if people are like, oh, if they're overly mushy. Like you're not like that when you're not around other people. Like if you're like shouting across the room, "I love you, honey. Oh, I love you too,
Well,
honey.
I can't do
You
that.
make me
I'm usually
so
in the middle of
happy." Blah blah blah.
Where I'm
shit
at,
like
I can't do that.
Well,
We
you don't
both know
act like
that.
that for real. Come on.
I do.
All right, on to the topic of today.
No, I act like that for real, right? But I don't do it in certain situations if that's what you're going to get
That's what
at.
I'm saying. Why do you need to do it on social media? Do you need everybody to know that that's how you feel? To me, it's fake. Kind of like the
Okay.
people who blow smoke up your ass on social media. They're like, today's gonna be a great day. There's unicorns and rainbows.
Well,
shooting
no, I
sunshine
understand that part
up
too.
my ass.
I don't get that. And on that note, I will agree with you on that, and this is how. Because it's like, send this link to 10 people or they'll die. I'm waiting for someone to
Well, I don't know if
die.
that's happy.
Right.
Well, but they're all gonna die. They're right. They're just not saying when they're gonna
Yeah,
die.
or we have starving kids, which is a tragedy, but if you send this to 10 people, their entire village will be saved. No, it won't.
It won't, because some lord, some drug lord, or
Mm-hmm.
some local tribal lord is going to steal that rice before it ever gets to them.
And even then,
Sad
I mean,
but true.
they're not on social media, so how the
Yeah,
hell
how do they
send
know? Where's this money going? Shut the fuck up. Yeah.
I don't get that. I never did that.
All right, back to the topic of
Back
today.
to the
This is
topic.
Gray Man Part 2. Today, I actually have some questions for Ron.
I like how you segue. You actually want to get right back on the topic.
I want to get
I've
back
tried
on the
that
topic
with
because
you.
the topic is important.
Okay, so what are your questions?
My questions are this.
Okay.
I looked at a couple sites on this whole Gray Man idea.
Okay.
Why are these sites more focused on... I guess it's my misunderstanding.
Okay.
I also want to point out from listening to the last podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Did you listen to the last podcast?
Yeah, I did actually.
Pointers, tips for the Rons with podcasting. He's falling into one of those traps that is common with podcasting, but you have to start listening to yourself as you talk. You said so many times on the last podcast that I was shocked.
Oh.
So now when you listen to the podcast, you actually have to start being critical of yourself and saying, am I doing this too much?
I thought.
Yes, I know you want it to sound organic, but
Oh, see, I was
However-
going to say that. That's
however,
a great
saying
cut down.
so too many, saying any word too many times is a bit redundant.
What about repeating itself?
That same thing, redundant. Yes,
Oh.
redundant. And now I will segue back into the topic of
Okay,
discussion.
so I will refrain from saying that word. It's kind of a segue word there. Okay.
Right.
So I'm going to have to be a lot more cognitive.
And you can
when
do
I'm
that
saying-
with a simple pause, as long as the pause doesn't take too long. But you'll notice that we do use a lot of words like but, so, right, that sort of thing, because it makes us, it's these filler words that transitions you to another subject or a different sentence. And I wonder if that's very common
I
just
concur.
as Americans.
Our language skills we think they have evolved, have devolved. Okay, what happened there? Uh-oh.
No,
okay, yeah,
fine.
word. It did that thing again. Our language skills have devolved. I'm getting this really big echo. I'm okay with it, though. And by that, I mean, when you go to certain parts of America, right, and language has evolved to that area, it's also devolved where they use a lot of filler words. So and there's that word so trying to understand what they're saying, you have to take a step back in your thinking. Mm-hmm. And in their mind, their language is gone forward. Go out to LA, bigger cities like New York, right? And you really have to listen to what they're saying. And when you go down...
I like how I can see you concentrating. You're just like really concentrating. Like, I'm trying
I'm
so hard.
Yeah, I am. I'm
not
really
to
trying
say
hard.
So every 5 seconds.
However, when you go back to understanding what they're saying, you try to relate on that note and you try to mimic what they're saying so they will understand you. And that's probably where we get lost in communication. Mm. If I went over to a certain population in our little area and I would walk in and I could talk to the people, I would start to listen to their language skills and see how they were talking, and I would try to mimic it. But if I walked in and I started talking like I normally talk, and if it's about technology or whatever, and I know it's going to be over their head, they're not going to understand me. And in turn, I'm not going to understand them. So I have to devolve my language skills a bit.
So what you're saying, as I use the word so again, you've devolved your language skills for the podcast?
No, I'm not. However, I've evolved my language skills to meet your standards.
Ah, I see.
And you're right. I use a lot of filler words. I did in the beginning because you coached me in what to do that. And so I started listening to podcasters, talk radio, to see the segue. My dear wife was actually a broadcaster when I met her. And she went to school for this.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds terrible.
Yeah. Why is that terrible? Wow.
That sounds like a terrible thing to go to school for.
Not really.
Is she using it now?
Yeah, she is actually.
What does she do now?
She works in the medical field, and so do you. But, that's that communication skills that you have to use. Uh-huh. And wow, you're right. Yeah, I'm trying not to use that
You're
word.
like, what word could I say next?
Yeah, it's a segue. However, when you get into the real world, your communication skills have to be okay. Uh-huh. Right? They have to be there. And you can't, use it on your terms. You have to use it on their terms.
Well, I'm not saying that it's wrong what you're doing. I'm just saying as time goes by, when you're podcasting, for me anyway, I listen to the podcast and go, oh man, this person says this word way too many times.
Yeah, but you're being very critical.
And I listen to myself and I look at it and I go, wow, I've said this word way too many times.
Yeah, but you're being very critical. You really are. And we are often critical.
Are you offended now? Now you're saying I'm being too critical, and now you're offended.
But
you're so critical. Are you going to squirt some? Are you going to cry?
No.
You want to be in charge?
Not at all.
Be in charge? Is
no.
That what's going on here? Is there a coup? Is this a coup? You're offended?
I like that. Keep this going. But we're often critical of our own skills.
What do you think, Paper Doc? Well, here at the Paper Doc, to weigh in, I believe that the children are the future.
They are.
Teach them well and let them lead the way.
Well, let's not do that just yet.
I'm not really sure that has much of anything to do with what we're even talking about. Were you even paying attention? I gotta be honest with you. I've been napping this whole time, so I don't even know what's going on right now. And honestly, I'm a little buzzed also. I've been drinking.
Wow.
It's 10:45 in the morning here.
Is it 10:45? Wow.
Well, I guess it's not early to start drinking if you never stopped, you know what I mean?
No, I understand.
Because the Paper Doc is the party kind of guy. He's a party guy.
You can always drink. But you're critical of your own skills because now you're podcasting, right? And so am I with you. So we want this thing to flourish. However, when they get down,
I'm going
damn
to
you,
replace.
that is so
I'm going
hard
to replace
to do.
so with however. However.
Wow, you caught onto that one too. So I'll just say it. So you've become highly critical of your own skill. To everybody else, you're fantastic, but you're critical of your own skill. So am I. But I don't listen to it as that. I listen to podcasters, and I don't pick apart what they're saying per se. I listen to key words that say it's their opinion versus fact. But other than that, I listen to podcasts to listen to the podcast. I don't pick apart the words. In my honest opinion, if you want to have a professional, and I'm going to use the word organic podcast, as you mentioned, let it flow. If you start to become highly critical of what you're saying, at some point, as you see me stump my brain trying to grab the next word, that's going to happen. And then you lose that base of having fun. And then everybody's going to go, in the beginning it was great, but they've evolved.
I'm not saying that we've
thing.
evolved that much. I'm just saying that for me personally, I'm like, well, that's another word. Like, I'm trying not to say it that often. I'm trying to get my point across without saying all the filler words. And it's not going to come across like I'm a Harvard professor. I'm just saying for me personally.
And
The ones that I've tried to break myself of is saying the common phrase over and over again. Like that one. On to this theory.
no, but this is your podcast and you want it to be good or great. Listen to other podcasters and see what they say. Well, seriously, right? Analyze it and see what they say. And just don't listen to just the ones you like. Pick one that's off topic that you would never listen to and see how it progresses. And see if it matches your standard. And if it doesn't, see where it goes. See why it's popular. See why it's unpopular, right? But just by listening. And when you figure that out, ask yourself, do I really want to be that way? Do I want to be this way? Or, that's just not me.
Well, I base a lot of my podcasts on quality-wise on my favorite podcast, the last podcast on the left. They don't do a lot of word repeating. They're very spontaneous. Even though a lot of it is scripted, they have an outline that they follow, and they do really well. These are very good podcasts. They don't use a lot of filler words, and it sounds natural, which is nice. I think they do a good job. Obviously, their early years, when you listen back, they've been doing it for quite a few years now.
Okay.
When you listen back to their early stuff, it's not quite that way. So they've gotten better over time, and it's a very...
So their language skills have evolved.
Right.
So
They
that's
click
our
very
goal
well.
is to get up there to where they're at.
And still make it interesting. Because like I said, I don't
agree.
want to sound like a Harvard professor. Now, on to this topic.
On to this topic.
Here's my question for you.
There's your question.
Did I misunderstand the whole principle of the gray man theory? Because here's what I was thinking. I was thinking it was not so much are we worried that we're in some sort of a conflict, but how do I be a gray man in the event that, for me, it's more like how do I be a gray man in society without drawing attention to myself, regardless of whether or not I'm in a survival situation or not.
That's an
Maybe I
interesting
want to
question.
gather intel. Maybe I just don't want to be bothered. Maybe I want to move about through society without being noticed. The stuff that I was reading online seemed like it was all focused on having to survive in a dangerous situation. Can you elaborate on that, Ron's? Hey!
Oh, fuck that word. No, you're right. However, it's a paranoid situation that you're putting yourself into. And by that, I mean it's you, right? If you think society's going to come down on you, we can't change that, right? So that you have to have, before undertaking a gray man theory, some mental stability. You really do. Because if you think the world's out to get you, then you're going to see the bad. Not every situation is going to have a gray man theory to it unless you make it. So you work in a profession where you have to adapt real hard and fast sometimes, right? Even though you don't want to be noticed, you have to walk in and be unnoticed. When you diagnose a patient, it focuses on them. You have to understand where they're coming from. Once again, there's that empathy. You have to move in and out, right? Because then, you know, that's the way it has to be sometimes. When you're out in society, you don't have to do that. So that gray man theory is, almost like a survival tactic if you really want to use it that way. To me, it's just when I go to some places that I don't feel comfortable in, I assess the situation, whether it's just recently I was over in a certain area part of town where I didn't feel comfortable.
And why didn't you feel comfortable?
Just because I didn't know the people there. I walked in unknown. So I had to walk into a certain situation, ask for a certain person, and I was going to get really scrutinized real fast. So I had to be unintrusive, right? I had to, kind of blend in a bit way. Mm-hmm. So once I got accepted, I could move in and out. They gave me full reign where I needed to be. But until then, how do I blend in? How do I turn the situation to my advantage? How do I not cause a conflict? So, it was on a computer job. And I'm not going to reveal where it was because I don't want to bring any attention to this. But walking into the certain situation, it made me feel uncomfortable. Right? And that was just my own paranoia. Once again, it was my paranoia that would create a uninhabitable environment. So your question is it always needed? Not always. But you can use it when you're moving in and out. Sort of like when we get pulled over by the police, right? Will the gray man theory work there? Yeah, it will. Now, not in the sense that you're going to try and hide, but if you act a certain way, right? Instead of being arrogant, you're not totally in a submissive role, but you're right in the guidelines of the middle that if they ask a question, you ask it directly, you answer it directly. If you have a question, you ask it directly, right? So you're trying not to be offensive. On the same token, you're not trying to be defensive either. So you don't call attention to yourself. Because when people get pulled over, oh man, automatically it's a fight or flight mode, right? Unless they've done, if they've done nothing wrong, they're like, I've gotten pulled over. I want to find out why.
Yeah.
Just recently, my son got pulled over. Right? He was driving. Headlight was out. Cop called him over. I pulled you over because your headlight's out. If you can get it fixed in the next couple of days, that'd be cool. I let it go a week. He took his girlfriend home again. Same police officer. Same police officer pulled him over. And we were in the midst of getting it fixed. He says, third time, I'm not going to let you go. Fix it. I'm like, okay.
A third time, he smashes the other one out.
No. However, I had a solution. It did not work. This solution was, and please, if you're listening, don't follow this damn solution. It's an idiot solution. Once again, idiot guys talking here, is that drive all the way out to this town with your brights on. Don't flick them off. Drive with your brights on. Both headlights work that way. Okay. Sure. So he's driving back into our town. Someone flashes his lights.
Which is illegal.
What? Driving with brights on?
No, flashing.
However, it was a police officer telling him he has his brights on. So what does my son do? He clicks them off. He gets pulled over. Need to?
Because if he could have just, that moment in time, just drive right by. It doesn't matter. He wouldn't have.
So he got pulled over, and the police officers in this situation were doing nothing wrong. That's their job.
Right.
So he pulls over. Oh, you got a headlight out. Get it fixed. I won't write you a ticket. So this time I'm like, let's get this fixed. Let's do what we need to this time. And sure enough, we got it fixed. It was like a 5-minute fix, right?
Well, why didn't you fix it before that? How many times does your kid have to get pulled over before you fix something?
Now, let me state that.
No, that's bullshit.
Let me state something right here. Is my son studying to be an auto mechanic?
Yes.
And it was his project to get the part and get it fixed. He gets credit if he takes it in and does it, right? So do we fix it on our own and he doesn't get the credit, or does he take it in and get it fixed?
What's better, getting the credit or not getting a ticket?
Well, when he's graduating from college, I can ride those coattails.
Sure you can. Yeah, he's going to say, oh, here, Dad, let me give you money.
But it was experience, too, right? And I can honestly say that I didn't know how to fix the
I think
the headlight.
That I am a gray man inadvertently.
I think we all are.
Let me explain why.
Why is that?
For example,
if you're doing a podcast, you're not gray man. You're putting yourself out there.
No, I know who knows who I am. I am
the real urge to sabotage that
Hispanic American. I'm Hispanic American, right?
I thought you were Latino.
Yeah, same thing.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Say Chicano if you want. I mean, it's all
You're
the same.
not a chick.
Chicano. It's all the same thing. However, I look enough like a white person, for example. Most
No
people,
way!
and I was raised white. So all of my mannerisms are basically as a white person. Lots of people don't even think that I'm Mexican. A lot of times people are like, are you Italian or whatever?
I would never
So
believe that.
I can easily play a white person. The only time it ever catches up to me where it doesn't work is if I get pulled over by a cop, because then immediately they always fucking think I'm Mexican. So I can't play the white card and be like, why the fuck did you pull me over? Because I'll get a ticket. I have to be like super nice and everything, and they'll still try to give me a ticket.
Okay, I understand where you're coming with that on the gray man theory.
Yeah.
So yeah, I believe that's true.
Now, however, if I'm in an environment with Latinos or Latin Americans or Mexican Americans, et cetera, I can sort of blend in with them also, depending on what I wear.
That's a double standard, and you're not the only person to do that, right? If you have light skin, you can go down south, but then again, you're chastised by the white community. And I'm not racist by far. You're not racist. We both know that.
No,
But
I hate
to
everybody.
To our listeners, we're not
I hate
racist.
everybody. It doesn't have to do with what your race is. If you're
Yeah.
a dick, you're a fucking dick, and I don't like you.
That's
If
not
you're a nice
racist.
person, I nice you.
Yeah.
I like you.
You
If
nice
you're-
me.
If you're a nice person,
You nice me.
it doesn't matter what race you are. Then I like you.
I
You're a
agree.
nice person.
But it's like that where you go in anywhere in society. It really is.
Well,
right?
for the same thing though. Okay, if you said to me, "Hey, Beaveman, let's go to this bar, this country western bar,"
Okay.
I would say, "Great, let's go." If we went to that country western bar, I'm not going to wear my work clothes. I'm not
Okay.
going to wear.
But
you
that
know-
goes to what I was saying too. You know how to blend in.
right.
If you,
I'm just saying I already do this, but you'll see people that don't do this. For example, you'll see people at like a country bar that show up wearing a polo shirt and khakis.
Well, maybe
And
they just
now
gotta
they're
work.
and now they stick out. That's something that I don't do.
Okay, I understand that. I mean, you're not going to show up in your village people outfit, leather chaps and all. That's going to make you stick out. But when you walk in, let's face it, you're going to try and blend into the environment because you don't know that environment. Now, those people in the polo shirt, they probably know that environment and they know the people. So they're walking in probably not as an outsider. But to them, they stick out. And to you, they're an outsider. So that's where that would come in.
Right. Well, and then it goes the same thing if you're talking about, for example, it doesn't happen often, but at times people will come and say, "Can you go to this dinner? There's going to be a lecture." And they never pick a restaurant that I would go to. It's not
Okay.
like they're picking the bowling alley's burger bar. You know,
That would be a cool lecture.
And one of the best burgers in town here is at, in my opinion, is at the bowling alley. But anyway,
No problem.
I don't like fancy restaurants. Let's just say that.
I don't like them either.
So the lecture is always going to be.
You walk
at
in
a
with
fancy
clown
restaurant.
shoes and then they look at you funny.
They do look at you funny. I don't ever go to those lectures dressed like I would normally dress. Like I usually wear a t-shirt and jeans or a t-shirt and casual pants, and I'll get to why here in a minute, which is also part of the whole gray man thing, which I'm saying I think that this theory is I'm already doing a lot of it. Okay, so if I go to those things, I don't go like I would normally dress, even though I could and say, "This is me. If you don't like it, who fucking cares?"
Well,
I
you
go
have to
wearing,
dress for your
I
profession,
go
though.
wearing a suit. I
You
go
have to
wearing
dress
a
for your
suit.
profession.
Now, having said that, I don't wear a fucking tie.
You don't
Everybody
have
else is
to
wearing a fucking tie. I don't wear
Well,
a fucking
yeah,
tie.
I know why you don't wear a tie, but you have to dress for your profession.
Right, but I don't have to. I don't have to go there dressed like that, but I do. You know what I'm saying? So I blend in it because if I didn't do that, then I would be noticeable, and that the last thing that I want to do is be noticeable. Using that same environment as an example.
All right.
If I had a question that I really wanted to ask at this lecture when they open it for questions, I wouldn't ask
Why?
because I don't want to draw attention to myself. I don't want them to remember or know who I am. Whether it's a good question, it's a great question, it's a great comment that I have. What you'll see that with this particular, and I'm not maligning them, check out that word. I'm not
Wow.
maligning them in any way.
I like
but
that
when you
word.
go to these presentations, and I hate to go, that's why I never go.
Okay.
there's always some arrogant fucktard physician there who's like, actually, this study says this. And you're like, you just waited the entire lecture to ask this stupid fucking question.
Well, our society is
to be a dick.
Our society is full of people like that.
Instead of asking a valid question about the study that you're interested in, the positive aspect of it, you want to be the negative person. They always do that because they try to always say, I'm smarter than you are.
On that note, right? And I use that word, on that note. And I often talk about this in my personal life, is watch how someone dominates a conversation when you start it. And it's amazing how people will override. It's almost like an arrogance of look at me.
Right.
And to me, that's annoying. And it really is. It's like, this is my time to shine.
You right there.
Yeah. No, this is your podcast. But when we do that, it's annoying. And I have it done, and I've done it to other people, and I'll take a step back, and I'm like, oh, I was a complete ass. Now, when we do that, sometimes what happens is our answer is wrong. So I can completely understand why they did that. But sometimes their answer is wrong. I should say their answer is right, my answer is wrong, or my statement's wrong in that context. But they're wrong. Or they just want to look at me.
Right.
Or at that point,
that
it
idea
pisses
of
me off.
one-upsmanship.
Yeah. No.
And sometimes they'll blurt out and interrupt you to tell you something that doesn't really relate to it. But in their mind, it relates to what you're talking about. So then you're like, what the fuck are you even talking about? It's funny because my wife does that. And she'll tell this story.
Way.
She'll tell this story. I'll be telling her about something, and then she'll just interrupt me to tell me something that she thinks in some way is related to it, but it's really very, very, very loosely related.
Is she going to listen to this podcast?
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay.
And then I'm going to say, and then I'll look at her and I'm like, that's interesting that you had it to interrupt me to tell me that, but I'm not even sure in what way this relates to what we're talking about. And then she'll tell me how it very loosely relates to what we're talking about. And my response is, you just really wanted to dominate the conversation to talk about this. That's what you wanted to do. What's funny is she actually has this phrase that she'll say because she doesn't like it when people do that to her, where they're going on and on. They're always like, oh, me, and one-upping everything you say. Like if you said, hey, I went to the Grand Canyon this weekend. They're like, I went to Morocco. Oh, okay.
Well, you know what I call that? In my personal life, I call it the shiny rocket syndrome. You know what that means? I'll explain it.
Can I finish saying what I was saying? Can I tell you what phrase she uses?
Yeah, please do.
So I was giving my example, and Ron had to bring up his shiny rocket thing because that was more important than the one phrase that I wanted to say.
I think we're on the same subject, but okay, what is that one phrase?
When people do that to her, she says, I invented the color blue.
Oh, so she kind of shuts it down like
yes,
that.
Because it's a slap in their face saying, okay, you don't have to do it's me, and I'm one-upping you. And finally she'll just say, I invented the color blue.
So when I hear her say that, I will stay true to the subject and keep going.
But you know where she gets that. Do you remember that movie, oh God, what the fuck was the name of it? Where the two girls go back to their high school reunion?
I think I know the movie you're thinking of, but I never saw it.
It's got Lisa Kudrow in it, and I can't remember the name of it is, but they're kind of losers. They're nice people, but they're kind of losers.
Okay.
So they go back to their high school reunion, and they tell everybody they invented Post-its. So that's kind of where Amethyst thing comes from, where she said, I invented the color blue. They said, we invented Post-its? And they're two dizzy chicks, and it's hilarious, but they're just always like, we invented Post-its? And everybody believes them that they invented Post-its.
Well, the reason I call it shiny rocket syndrome is
Back to Ron's shiny rocket syndrome.
I had a sibling, right? And no matter what I had, he had one better. Yep. Now, on that note, it was, once again, there's my phrase, is that it's identical in every situation and in every sense of the way. The watch I wear is just like his. Same function, same brand, same day it was made, everything. But his can fly. Right? His has got like one more hole in the band so you can go one more further. Or
that just means he has tiny wrists.
Right? Or it's like it's shinier in the sunlight So I don't have the same watch as him, but I do. And it came down to whatever I have one just like it, but it's better. And I'm like, at some point I took a step back, like, you know what? This is a war and a battle I can't win because I'm going up against your mentality, which of course to me is an idiot mentality. Now I love my brothers and my sisters out there, but sometimes even I know when to step back and go, you know what? It's not worth it. I know what I have and I have it better. Or I know what I have and no matter what I have, it's not good enough for you, but it's okay for me. Right? And that's where that phrase comes from.
And then some things are more important to you than might be important to them anyway. For example, if I was the same thing, if somebody had a better watch than me, I'd be like, okay, I don't really care, but I got this sweet sword over here that I give a shit about that I paid X amount of dollars for.
I agree.
You know what I mean? So it's just a matter of priorities. What do you give a shit more about than something else? For example, you've got all these fancy... I'll use my brother's example.
Okay.
For some reason, he likes to spend a lot of money on pots, pans, cutlery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He's a great cook, my brother.
Okay, fantastic.
Fantastic cook. But I really believe he'd be a fantastic cook without spending all that money on the pots and pans and expensive cutlery. Because he's an awesome cook. What difference do the pans and pots mean that he spends a lot of money on? It makes him happy. He likes it. I would go so far as to say that my brother's such a good cook that you could almost chalk it up to that's a hobby of his because he's really good at it. But I'm pretty sure that my brother is such a good cook that he could cook just as well with my pots and pans that I didn't spend that much money on.
Well, if you're going to get into that aspect, yeah. However, it's the heat reduction and stuff like that. If you get into the minutia of it. But I also agree with you, too, because, to me, I cook in one of my favorite pans is an iron skillet.
Yeah.
I love it, right?
Well, that's a great, in general, that's a good one.
But when you look at the stuff out there, and it's like anything else, there's, in their opinion, and it's their opinion.
Right.
It's better.
I agree with you. I'm just saying that I think that he's so skilled in general. Does he really need that? Nah.
I don't know.
If it makes him happy, great. But then again, he's also not saying, Beaveman, you really should get some better pots and pans to me. Whereas you have people that would say that. They're like, oh, well, you have these pots and pans. I have these pots and pans. And you're like, okay, you're fucking a Riri. Good for you.
Well, yeah, that's what Shiny Rocket Syndrome is to me. We have a Saturn. Well, why don't you have a new car? Why don't you buy a Jeep?
No car payment, motherfucker.
Yeah. All right. And the Saturn I have out now is actually my wife's. Drives a lot better. It's been maintained well. It's a trooper. I would love a brand new Jeep, or actually I'd like a Jeep CJ7, one of those old ones.
I don't understand why would they say, why don't you get a Jeep? That seems like a far stretch. Instead of saying, that's very specific. You have why don't you get a Jeep?
Well,
like,
the thing is, why don't
you,
why don't you have something newer, right? And
no car payment, motherfucker.
Yeah, but that's also what you said earlier. It's like, I have it so much better than you. I'm like, no, I have what I have, and I make do with what I have, and I'm comfortable with what I have. A lot of people just can't accept that. And when you accept it, it really pisses them off, right? It really does. In any environment, back to the gray man theory, if you hold yourself, right, accountable for all your actions, you can blend in real easy. And yeah, you're going to get that one arrogant asshole who's going to stick out. And to me, that's the one guy I don't want to be around because he's going to bring attention to your, to your movement.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was one of those things that I thought was kind of interesting. For some reason, when I was reading about it, it brought me back to The Walking Dead.
Yeah, one of my favorite shows.
I started thinking about that. I'm like, well, if you're the one that people look to, that puts you in more danger than other people. So if you're Rick,
okay,
who establishes himself basically like a leader, inadvertently and eventually because he wanted to be the leader, then that draws more attention.
I don't think he wanted to be a leader. What he was trying to do.
No, later on. I mean, the early seasons, he wasn't really saying, I'm the leader. But later on, he was fighting to be the leader.
Well, I don't think so. What
Yeah,
happened?
when they were in that one city, when that lady was in charge and she made him the police chief, he wanted to be in charge.
Okay, what happened? When was this?
The little lady who was in charge of the city, of the town that they were living in, and she made him the police chief, but he really wanted to be in charge, and she ended up becoming a zombie.
Okay.
Before they had their encounters with Negan.
Okay, I know most of the episodes. I
So you're saying
Probably
I'm wrong. Are you saying I'm wrong?
No,
What are you saying?
no,
You're
I'm saying you're
that what
misinformed.
Okay.
You're not
That's fine.
wrong if
That's
you're
fine.
misinformed.
That's true. If you don't know, I've forgotten more things than I'll ever know.
I should go back and rewatch some of those seasons, but yeah, I should because I came in about a little. I forgot where I came in, but I started to pick up. I mean, Daryl came in. He was in one of the beginnings, and then after that,
Him and his brother.
and I came in about maybe the first or second episode. Then I kind of watched it off and on sporadically, so I didn't follow a plot line. It was, and then when I started watching it religiously, right, that's when I really got deeply involved in it. It's sort of like when,
Now, this was on AMC,
yeah, it's.
and you have
I do have cable.
you have cable for AMC.
Yes, I do.
I see.
I see where you're going with that, right?
It's not your neighbor's cable.
No, it's not my
That
neighbor's
is
cable.
your cable.
It's mine.
It's your cable.
It's my
Very well.
cable. I should say my wife's cable. She lets me watch it. Right.
But if you're doing that, you're not the gray man. It's kind of the same thing. One of the other interesting concepts I was reading was, say for example, and I don't think the gray man thing has to be all about survival. It seems like everything I read was like all about survival and the apocalypse kind of.
No, you're right. You're right.
I don't think it needs to be that way. But one of the other interesting points they brought up was, don't wear tactical clothing everywhere you go. Yeah. And you see that a lot. Some people wear like tactical pants and stuff like that.
Well, I think the reason they say that is because it brings attention to yourself.
right. They're like, why is that person wearing tactical pants? Or don't let everybody know that you've stockpiled water and food. If there was an actual situation where power went out because of a weather catastrophe and we weren't going to have it for months, when all of the people that your friends and neighbors and everything, not necessarily your family, if they're all panicking and you're panicking too, even though you know that at your house you've got plenty of food and water, but if you act like they do, then it won't draw attention to you because then they're going
I
to
see
know.
what you're saying.
That way they don't know that you've got food and water.
So you try to blend in
Right.
But see, I wouldn't panic. Right? I'd remain calm.
But if you remain calm, then you're not a gray man. If everybody around you is, if you're
Yeah, but
secretly calm,
you're trying to blend in.
yeah, but
right?
if you're secretly calm, but you act like they do,
Okay.
then you are blending in. But if you're calm while everybody else is panicking around you, that draws attention to you.
Well, let's go back to The Walking Dead, and it's just like the Whisperers, right? Who walk around with the dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't stand out. They walk slow. They got the dead skin on, the zombie skins on, and they don't stand out in any sort of way other than that they look like the dead. However, the minute they expose themselves to other people and they take off the zombie skin, which of course I guess they smell like regular humans to the zombies. That's when they become that's when the
It's
attention
a
comes to
completely
them.
asinine, whatever idea, but yeah, like immediately they're like, oh,
Well, yeah,
he smells like living. He smells great.
exactly. So they're able to blend in. They don't make a lot of noise. And back to what you're saying, it's just like that. And all this panic, they're in the middle of it acting like them. But all the while, their mentality is, we're calm.
Right. Yeah, I'm not saying to panic. I'm saying look like you're panicked like everybody else. Ask the same questions that other people are asking. Like, oh my God, where are you getting food? We're starving, blah, blah, blah. Act like that, but in your mind know that like, yeah, this is a persona. This is a fake so that I don't draw attention to myself. And then when the shit hits the fan while everybody else is panicking, you can kind of get out of there anyway.
You'd have to blend in real well to the point where you're being unnoticed, so you can get out.
But I do think it's important not to let people know that you're stockpiling shit. In the event of an actual catastrophe, do you want people knocking on your door saying, hey man, got any extra MREs? Got any water? Got any guns and ammo?
Well, it was just like that. We just had a boil water advisory in my neighborhood, right? And I had 2 gallons of water just in case, right? Not that I need to stockpile it, but they say at least have, at least a week or 2 weeks worth of pantry goods in case power goes out, natural disasters, whatever. And I agree with that. But at some point, you have to say, okay, as my resources run low, where do I find more resources?
Right.
Now, on that, to how do I find other people in the same situation that we can pull our collective goods together and see where we stand? So I understand where you're coming from. We're going to, basically waiting for the shit to hit the fan. Before you do that, they'll assess the situation and see who's got what make sure you've got what you need before you go out asking for anybody else's help. I think this is what we're going for here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, don't be the one that they all know. Hey, if I go down to Beaveman's house, that guy's got all kinds of guns, ammo, water, and food. You don't want to be that person.
No, but if you know that person's a hunter, that's a good skill set to have. Mm-hmm. So know your environment too. Sort of like when you walk around in the city, know your environment.
Yeah.
Late at night, if you go to a high crime area, how do you not draw attention to yourself if you've got to be in there? Now, the only people that can walk around in that area without causing any type of problem are two types of people. One, the one that's going to cause problems, and the other people who kind of belong there. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying that they're lawbreakers, but the cops and neighborhood people, right? So they belong there. And I'm not trying to be inclusive about, profiling here. But it's usually the outsiders that come in and cause the problems. Now, the police show up, and they're somewhat of an outsider, but they're not going to cause a problem. They're going to try and solve a situation, and your neighbors are going to be there. So you're
except for those cops that go to those areas just to kill people because they can and then get away with it.
Okay. I haven't heard about that, but okay. I see where that stands, I guess, in a way.
just trying to plant that evil seed in people's heads that could happen, storybook wise.
Oh, okay.
Have you read the story American Psycho by Chuck? Was it? I can never say his
Chuck
last
Norris?
name. Chuck Palahniuk. No, the guy who wrote Fight Club.
Oh,
he also wrote American Psycho.
No, I haven't seen it yet.
No, it's very old. Christian Bale did the movie
I know who stars in it. It's on my.
The story is really interesting. A lot of the killing he does is to people that nobody cares about.
It's like Dexter.
Way before Dexter.
Yeah, but it's like Dexter.
Okay, so it's like Dexter, but it's way before Dexter. The idea is
it way before Dexter?
Kill prostitutes and homeless people because nobody cares. Once you start killing people that they care about, that people are gonna think are missing or is a problem, that's when you're gonna get caught.
Well, that's how serial killers get caught a lot, because they target a specific group. And when there's enough of that group goes missing, that's when everything becomes a lot more apparent.
Right.
I mean, yeah, if you watch Dexter, it happens. But
I don't watch Dexter. I've never watched Dexter.
I've never seen American Psycho, so we're kind of even on that point. So blending in, basically, I understand where he's coming from. Your skill set has to be to the point where you can blend in easily. Right. Watch The Walking Dead, The Whisperers. Again, they blend in so well, right? And they go from group to group. They can actually switch groups, right? They go from the undead to the living, right? And it's just a mindset, basically, and how they can transfer.
Well, I think the problem for me is that there's so many groups that I could blend into, but survival mode-wise, the best groups to blend into, in my opinion, like you talked about the first time, was the homeless. I don't think I could blend into that. You'd actually need training to blend into that.
No, you wouldn't.
Sure you would.
No, you wouldn't.
I'd stand out like crazy.
Are you kidding me? Give it a couple of days. Don't wash. Have your hair messed up. Slur your speech a little. Roll around sometimes in your clothes, right? Now, we're not talking in a three-piece suit, but we're talking jeans and a regular T-shirt and a coat, right? It'll get dirty in about 3 to 5 days. You'll blend in perfectly, right? Look at these guys. Watch their demeanor, right? Now, I'm not saying that they're not clean per se, but they know their clothes aren't the best, right? And give it 3 to 5 days, you'll blend in perfectly. Now, you'll stick out to them because you'll be brand new, but to the rest of society, you'll blend in like a homeless person. And then to blend in, you'll just need like a cardboard with a little bit saying, listen to my podcast. And they're like, oh man, just another homeless podcaster. Right. What can we do? Can we go listen to him?
Homeless podcasters.
And I could see going by you and someone saying, don't look at him because you'll have to listen to him. Don't. Oh man, all right, Siri, load him up. I'm like, okay, we'll listen to him, and you'll get that little stat like, thank you.
They got one. You're like, yes, I got one. Thank you.
But yeah, you can blend in.
Now, if you were going to do that, Fantasyland, let's say that we were going to do it. how would you do it? Now, would you carry? Because, like for me, right? I'm legally allowed to carry a gun.
Okay.
Right, so nobody can say anything. If I'm staying in the areas where I'm legally allowed to carry a gun, I'm not walking into a church or a hospital or whatever.
Of course.
Let's take one of our local parks where the homeless hangs out.
Okay.
I got a gun on me. I'm allowed to carry it.
Yes, you are.
Okay. And I would have money also hidden on me.
Okay.
All right, for security wise. I've got those things. I've got the currency that's going to take care of me and everything. What are the chances that that would be enough for me to be still unobtrusive and still be safe? Or should I not bother to do that at all?
One, think about your weapon of choice. Right. Now, I understand that everybody's got a right to carry within the legal limits. Mm-hmm. But let's define what right to carry means. Right. Now, I'm not dissing the Second Amendment, by the way. But I could carry, I think, nunchucks for the Americans out there.
Can you?
I think so.
I don't think so.
I think they just passed it in, I think,
Texas?
Texas or New York.
Texas?
Yeah. But I can carry that around, right?
Uh-huh.
Even more so, I can carry a pocket knife with me, right? Or a straight blade, right, with me. So there I have an open carry. I've seen guys carry with a 3-inch blade on their hip, right? And we don't even think about, now this is how I can't think of the word, but this is how it's so unobtrusive that no one notices, is that you can carry a utility knife in your pocket with the clip showing on the outside that's hooked to your pocket, and no one thinks about it. Now, we live in an industrial area, of course, but no one thinks about it. So you can always open carry. It depends on what you can carry or what you can afford to carry.
I'm thinking about, okay, security for myself, all right? For example, if I was under the threat of being accosted.
Mm-hmm.
If you pull out a utility knife,
okay,
there's still a good chance that you're going to get accosted. The chance that you're going to get accosted is still pretty high. Okay, if somebody wants to attack you.
I can see that scenario happening possibly.
However,
because you're kind of cute.
If I pull out my gun, I just significantly decreased the chances of getting accosted, because this is a reach out and touch you weapon. It's not I have to be close to you to use it.
The doc finds you cute. That's what he said. However, you're showing a show of force.
Right.
And I understand that standoff happens. So if you're going to show a gun, or I should say a weapon that can fire a projectile, yeah, it's going to be you've got that way to stop it, but you are trained in skills, we won't mention where, that you can, that's probably one of the things you want them to pull on you so you could break them into.
Mm-hmm. No, not really. The point, what I'm making is this. If I can diffuse the situation, obviously with words, fine. But if somebody is close enough for me to use a pocket knife,
okay,
I didn't do a job of diffusing the situation. And there's a good chance that if I had to use that, I'm going to go to jail and the self-defense plea isn't going to work. I'm going to go to jail, period. Now, however, if there's a distance and I pull a gun and I say, stop, I have a gun, and I still end up shooting that person, yeah, I'm going to go to jail, but I'm not going to jail for life for stabbing somebody. I'm going to jail for shooting them, and I probably won't be in there very long.
The situation is still the same. It's just the distance that changed.
Yeah, because that's the point, though. If you're close enough for me to stab you, I had to necessarily say, oh, I'm going to interact with this person to stab them. It's the same. This is what they teach you when you take a concealed weapons class. Basically, they say, and they're right. If I diffuse a situation from a distance, I've given you the opportunity, and I say, I've got a gun. If you're going to still try to attack me, you're going to get shot.
Okay.
It's not like they turned around and ran and I shot them. There's a difference.
No, I understand that too.
If they're close enough to me for me to stab them, I've mentally decided I'm going to stab that person.
But not all the situations.
But it's a bare. That's a difference between a gun is considered a civilized offense. A knife is not. Now, if you took it further and said, like nunchaku, like if we were legally allowed to carry that, still, there's a little bit of distance there. I can use that. And it's not like I'm saying, I'm going to stab you. My point is this. Whenever you decide that your self-defense is going to be stabbing, in the eyes of the law, you're not going to be looked on favorably. If it was like I'm going to like, okay, I gave you the chance. Now I'm going to whack you with my nunchaku. If it's legal to carry them, you're going to be way better off in the eyes of the law than you are with a knife.
Well, once again, it's perception on that, though, too. If I had no choice and you came at me and I disarmed you, but you're still coming at me, right, I would use whatever means, and that's the other thing about blending in as the gray man, to disarm you and make sure that you can't get back up. Mm-hmm. You can't, right? And that's going to send a message to all the other people like, oh, crap, right? Unfortunately, that's going to make you stick out, but it's also going to make you that more standoffish to them, that they're going to avoid you at the same time, that you put someone down, and that's it right there. And that's when you say, I don't want any problems.
I just wonder what would happen if you were a homeless person.
Okay.
Like pretending to be homeless, not necessarily homeless.
Okay.
But if you're a homeless person and you have a concealed carry permit legally, you're not doing anything, you're minding your own business, and the police decide to roust you, and you say, as they're rousting, they want to harass you, and you say, I have a concealed carry permit, I have a gun on me, I wonder how they would treat you.
That's a good question, too.
I bet that they would take your gun and beat the fuck out of you and arrest you.
That's a good question.
As a homeless person, even though you're legally allowed to have it.
That, once again, I'll repeat, that's a good question. I don't know. And if you're homeless and you have a weapon, they're going to ask you how you came by that weapon. Right? There are a lot of different avenues that are on that. There really are. If you're homeless and you have a weapon and it's a gun, that's going to tell you right there. Once again, dealing with the homeless and you're trying to blend in as the gray man, you're mentally unhinged. That's the first thing that's probably going to come to their mind. Mm-hmm. I know it would come to my mind. And then I'm like, okay, how do I diffuse the situation real quick? Now, if you're saying, I'm just doing this as an experiment, all right, then you need to back that up right away. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they'll still probably confiscate you, arrest you, or talk to you. As long as you haven't broken any laws whatsoever, to have them confiscate your weapon and take you into consideration that you're mentally unstable, you'll be okay.
They're just going to naturally assume that you're. That's the downside.
Yeah, I agree. They're naturally going to assume that.
I'm just saying that I'm advocating for the homeless person here. I'm just saying that I
okay.
wonder what would happen if you legally obtain it. There's nothing that says we have to have a home in order to have a. It'd be nice to have an address to put on there. I mean, they probably do occasionally. I mean, you do have to put down your address. But if you say, well, I don't really have an address, I live at periodically at the mission, or if you put down the last known address that you had, in the state that you're licensed in to carry, what difference does it make if you have a home or not? If you're legally allowed to carry?
Now you're really going into the shadow area of it, really, because when you really think about it, what led you to be homeless, right? And once again, I'm not saying...
You didn't sell your gun?
You didn't sell your gun, yeah.
You didn't sell your gun to get extra income?
And you look into it, it's like that, once again, it's this really gray area of what you're talking about, because here you have lost everything, but here's your one possession, and you're hanging on to it. How did you lose everything? Right. And they're going to, once again, it's about society judging you. Mm-hmm. And now you've made yourself a target. As far as weapons go, if you needed to use weapons out there, and I saw this for way back in the day, it was a documentary on train hoppers and homeless people, right? Is they use hammers, right? Because everybody can get a hold of a hammer.
Sure.
Right. And it's probably the most innocuous weapon out there. Right. And then, of course, you've got your knives. And then even further than that, and it's not so much more prevalent anymore, is that you had your glass bottles back in the day. Because whiskey bottles, alcohol bottles were all glass. And if you had, if you're fighting or you're in a situation, you happen to have a glass bottle nearby, broke it, now you've got a jagged edge.
I never understood why they broke it.
For the jagged edges.
That's dumb. Listen, here's the fun thing, right? For example, you take a whiskey bottle, right?
Okay.
Why would I break a whiskey bottle to use the jagged edge? Why wouldn't I wait to break that on the person and then have a jagged edge?
It's more of an intimidation then.
Yeah, fuck that. You imagine if you try to get hit. Here's the funny thing too. Like if you had a wine bottle, if you had an old school wine bottle, That bitch ain't breaking. You know how many people you could hit in the head with it before it broke?
Once
it's
again,
a great blunt object.
Well, going back to what you said earlier, it's a distance thing too, right? In order for me to stab or hit you, right, you have to be really close, within, let's say, 6 inches, right? 12 inches, possibly me coming at you, reaching out for you.
Right, but if I've got the wine bottle and I haven't broke it yet, I've got more distance.
That's true.
And then if I happen to break it on you, now I've got a weapon that's edged.
But what's more intimidating? Something that'll stab you or something that'll hit you? And that's a mental set.
Yeah, but what's more likely for it to be effective?
Once again, that's the individual. It really is.
Distance and reach, right? Especially if, for example, like I'm not super tall, so the reach that most people have is better than my reach.
Now
I've just taken a force multiplier and increased my reach.
Okay, I agree with that. However, what if that bottle doesn't break and they just bounce it off?
If I hit you in the head with a wine bottle, I don't want it to break anyway. Mm-hmm. If I hit you in the head with a wine bottle, I'm knock you the fuck out.
Yeah, you're trying to, but if it doesn't phase them, right, and they just kind of look at you, right?
So you keep hitting them.
Okay.
Are you kidding me? You think I'm going to hit him once and step back and be like, oh, that didn't work?
No, you're going to try to, but eventually, if it doesn't break, they're going to catch you, unless you're a skilled fighter, right? Or you're just lucky enough to just keep bludgeoning them.
Did you ever see one of those TV shows where the guy went to break the bottle and he broke it and it just completely broke? He's like, fuck. And it was like, so he had no edge part of it all. The whole thing broke.
But when you smack it on the ground, now you have a jagged thing. You've increased your chances for injury, right, against your opponent. Now, I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong, but hopefully this guy gets the message as you use it as a blunt object. Mm-hmm. And if he doesn't, he's still going to come at you.
I know personally I'd rather just use it as a blunt object, and if it breaks on them, okay, now I've just changed my weapon.
But once again, it's also going back to the gray man theory. How do you survive when you don't have those tools around you, right? Mm-hmm. Survivability is one of the key things. So if you're going to bring in a weapon, you've only got so much ammo for your gun.
Right.
You really do. A knife, infinite rounds. I mean, you can fire a gun, pew pew, right? And then you can fire a knife.
But if I use all the, one of the funniest things you always see in movies, right? The person runs out of ammo and they throw the gun.
Yeah.
It never hits the person that they're throwing it at. My opinion is, why throw away the gun? I've got a bludgeoning instrument. Why would I throw that away? So even if I ran out of ammo, I don't consider the knife more effective than my gun. Use that as, I've got that as a blocking and a striking instrument. Why would I throw that away?
Yeah, but you've been trained like that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that to me that doesn't make sense. I'm not going to go to the knife after I'm like, okay, I've got a big hunk, I've got a 1 pound or more piece.
It's a mental set too. You've got that training behind you. Some people don't have that mental set.
I'm sure not.
They don't have a skill set.
I'm sure not going to throw it away.
Right? It's like how do you hold a knife? How do you hold yourselves in society? It's a mental skill set sometimes. And
well, this is what I want. You listeners there in California or anywhere in the world or anywhere in the country, one, give us your opinion on how you think you would be looked upon by the legal system if you use a gun versus a knife. Or, if you're Ron's, a nunchaku versus a gun, or nunchaku versus a knife. Because I'd really like to know if there's any lawyers out there. That would be great to talk to you. The other question I had was, I think Ron needs to do this himself and find out if we are allowed to carry nunchaku, because I'm guessing we're not in Michigan. I don't think we would be allowed to. I think there's this weird thing.
That was just posed that we were, but I don't know
if we are. Awesome, because I'm going to start carrying my freaking Yarbo, nunchaku, something.
You can carry your Yarbo around. No one's going to suspect anything other than
they know it's a weapon. It doesn't. You can't pass it off as anything other than a weapon. That's all it is.
That's not true at all.
It's not a drumstick.
No one's going to know that. Nunchaku is pretty obvious.
Drumstick?
No one's going to know that.
It's still you can tell it's a bludgeoning instrument. What else would you pass it off as? My back scratcher?
Why not?
It's a little club.
No one's going to know that.
Okay.
Listen, you got two of those, you tie a piece of string, then everybody gets the clue that, oh, that's what it is, right? You take that around with you, right? They might come to the conclusion it's a bludgeoning object. Mm-hmm. Other than that, no one's going to give a damn and no one's going to know. I've seen, that's just a little over 12 inches, isn't it?
It depends.
Right. I've seen some of the ones that you guys carry, right? They're what, 6 to 7 inches?
It's actually based on your based on the person.
Okay.
It's a measurement from your elbow to your fingertips.
Okay, my elbow to my fingertips.
It just shouldn't be longer than like 16 inches.
The tip of my small finger or my middle finger?
Middle finger. So here.
Middle finger.
And
So, yeah.
it's usually, you can do it from
Okay,
90 degrees or bent.
I see that, right? If you were to carry that in society, with you, right? Yeah, I could see where someone could do that. But if it's thin enough, someone would say, oh, it might be a drumstick. It's a mental set again. Mm-hmm. It's what they're going to perceive. So, yeah, you can legally carry that out in public and no one's going to think twice. Now, you carry a bat, they're going to think twice. Mm-hmm. Right? They're actually going to look at that. They're going to think, okay, that's.
If I was going to pick between what I would carry, let's say that I wasn't allowed to carry a gun.
Something's going to go
Let's say I wasn't allowed to carry a gun as a homeless person.
Okay.
Let's say that it didn't matter whether I had a concealed weapons permit or not.
Okay.
I would pick the short. I have one. About this long. I don't know how long that is. What, 6-7 inches?
Yeah.
Tactical flashlight.
Even better.
Because that one, the reason why is because here's the downside. You'd have to keep it charged or have batteries in it. The downside, obviously, unless you got one that's got a little dial on it, but it doesn't get that strong of lumens. The reason why I would carry that is because it's so bright that it doesn't matter who you are. If I shine that light in your face right away, it's blind. It's going to blind you.
Okay, so
that's
you have
biology.
You have a tactical advantage using
right?
that.
So I do that. Boom. I've got that tactical advantage. Now I've disoriented you. I can strike you with a flashlight. I can run away. I can strike you and run away. I can do whatever. That's the weapon I would pick if I was not allowed to have.
There's nothing wrong with that, but it would blend in so well, no one would think twice.
Right, and people would just think, oh, it's just a homeless guy who has a flashlight.
Yeah.
Because who doesn't need a flashlight, to look around, use it, whatever.
Yeah, no one
As a
would
matter of
think twice.
fact, I'm considering developing a self-defense aspect of utilizing that flashlight as part of my hobby lobby.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
Yeah,
I could.
Yeah.
So when we're at that place we won't mention,
that shall be named.
That
place that shall not be named.
Yeah, the Southside Dojo won't be named.
Oh God.
So anyway, so when we're at that place you're training, so you're gonna come up to me and say, "Hey, Ron's, hey, I need you to hit me."
And then whip out my flashlight.
Whip out your flashlight.
Actually, it would be, because even if you did it you could do single-handed grasping it, but then if you had a nice good lanyard on it also, then you can use it as a swinging weapon too.
Yeah, but that's the skill set that you've been trained and I've been trained on. Not many people.
But I
have
feel
been
like I
trained
can
on
train other people on it though.
Oh, I have no doubt. I have no doubt. Right? But that's a skill set you're bringing into being a gray man. Once again, not many people are going to know how to do that. Remember, a lot of these gray man theories and a lot of these videos are done by smart, intelligent people who want to blend in. We're talking about the homeless where maybe some of them have a skill set like that, but not all of them.
What if I had my own homeless army?
Well, did you...
What movie was it that had the homeless people had this huge network of... It was in the 80s, I think.
Well, John Wick just came out and you see that where the homeless people are out there.
Was it Johnny Mnemonic that had all the homeless people that had... this big, huge army of homeless people?
I remember something like that, yeah. Johnny Mnemonic with Keanu Reeves. Yeah, I do remember something like that.
I feel like that's the one that it was. Anyway, whatever.
Anyway.
We kind of touched on that topic. It's a great topic by the Rons.
We'll come back to it eventually.
Yeah.
Get sidetracked as usual.
Yeah, well, that's still a good conversation. Once again, though, shouting out to Los Angeles, Mountain View, San Jose, basically California. Hey,
yeah,
California,
thanks,
California,
guys.
Arizona.
Appreciate it.
We may not have a lot of listeners here in Michigan, but that's okay if we're making it to the coast there, and also to Portugal and Great Britain.
And I'd love to see this go even further than that. So drop us a line, right? And in case you didn't know, I'm a black belt. So
and we're rebranding.
We're rebranding.
Listen to that. Stay tuned. So we don't want to lose our listeners when we rebrand.
Don't.
As soon as that music is done, soon as the website is up, as soon as the art is on there, we will launch.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. It's did you know Ron's a martial artist or a martial arts practitioner? And I did that just because I know that's going to make my wife laugh.
Yes.
Right?
Did anybody
so
know that?
Please drop us a line. Eventually we'll have an email, but if you wherever you listen to this and there's a comment section,
you can comment there.
Yeah, comment on it.
Comment there. Give us a rating.
Yeah,
All right?
definitely.
And from me, the Beaveman, I'm saying adios, mooch fuckos.
Take care.
Pika pika.